and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into Yorvipath for chronic hypoparathyroidism. We're not just going to cover the basics. We're really focusing on the how. How do you actually use it? Think of this as your practical, step-by-step clinical guide to getting started and managing this new therapy effectively. Okay, so first things first, what exactly is Yorvipath? Well, it's a long-acting parathyroid hormone analog, the PTH134. The whole idea here is to give your patients continuous exposure to the active hormone. It's designed to directly tackle that core deficiency you see in adults with hypoparathyroidism. So here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to walk through this just like you would with a patient. We'll start with preparing your patient, then move right into initiation and those crucial day one adjustments. After that, we'll get into the real nitty-gritty, the titration algorithm. Then we'll look at long-term care and safety, and we'll wrap it all up with a handy clinical checklist. All right, first up, preparing your patient. This is all about that pre-initiation checklist. You know, before that first dose even happens, there are a few key things we need to lock down to make sure they're ready to go. So what does that preparation look like? It really boils down to two critical labs you need to check within 2 weeks of that first dose. First, you've got to make sure their 25-hydroxyvitamin D is in the normal range, that they're replete. Second, and this is really important, you need to confirm their albumin-corrected serum calcium is 7.8 or higher. And why is that so important? Well, because the whole titration algorithm we're about to walk through was studied in patients who started at or above this calcium level. It's a key eligibility point. Okay, patients prepped and ready. Now we're at the starting line, initiation and day one adjustments. This is where we really get into starting Yorvipath and, just as importantly, modifying that conventional therapy. And the starting dose? It couldn't be simpler. It's the same for everyone who's eligible. 18 micrograms, subcutaneous, once a day. Nice and straightforward. Now this is where things get really interesting. Take a look at this table. It's not just about starting the new drug. It's about actively de-prescribing from day one. See how it's laid out? If your patient starts with a calcium of 8.3 or higher, you're immediately cutting their active vitamin D, their calcitriol, by at least half, or even stopping it if the dose is low. This is a big deal. It's a real shift in how we approach this, and it starts the moment you initiate. All right, now for the main event, the titration algorithm. This is really the heart of managing Yorvipath. It's all about navigating those dose adjustments based on serum calcium. Think of it as your playbook for getting the dose just right for each individual patient. So as we go through this algorithm, what are we actually trying to do? What's the end game? Well, the goal is pretty clear. We want to get that serum calcium into the normal range and keep it there without needing active vitamin D or those big therapeutic doses of calcium. We're aiming to get them down to just over-the-counter dietary supplement levels of calcium, if any. Okay, before we get into the flowcharts themselves, let's just lay down some ground rules. Think of these as the rules of thumb for titration. First, any dose change, whether you're going up or down, is always in 3 microgram steps. Second, you don't want to increase the dose any faster than every 7 days. You can, however, decrease it a little quicker, every 3 days if you need to. And the big one, you have to measure their serum calcium 7 to 10 days after any dose change. That's a must. So let's look at our first scenario. What if your patient's calcium is low, less than 8.3? The flowchart here really walks you through the logic. The key question is timing. You ask yourself, has it been at least 7 days since I last changed the dose? If the answer is yes, great. You can go ahead and increase the Yorvipath dose by 3 micrograms. But if the answer is no, you hold off on the Yorvipath, and instead, you look at bumping up their conventional therapy for the short term. Okay, now, what if their calcium is right in that sweet spot between 8.3 and 10.6? This is where the real weaning process kicks in, and there's a very clear order of operations here. The first thing you do is look at their active vitamin D. Are they still on it? If yes, that's what you target first. You decrease or stop it. Then you can increase the Yorvipath. It's only after you've gotten them completely off active D that you even start thinking about touching the calcium supplements. The principle is crystal clear. Wean conventional therapy first, always. Now let's flip it. What if their calcium is running a bit high, in that 10.7 to 11.9 range? The priority now is to de-escalate. But again, there's a specific order. You don't just jump to cutting the Yorvipath. First, you look at the active vitamin D. If they're on it, you cut that back while leaving the Yorvipath dose alone. If they're already off active D but still on calcium supplements, then you reduce the calcium. It's only when they're completely off conventional therapy that you would even think about decreasing the Yorvipath dose itself. It's a very logical, stepwise process. So what happens if the calcium goes too high? I mean, 12 or more. This is frank hypercalcemia, and the protocol is very clear and decisive. You stop, you withhold Yorvipath for 2 to 3 days, you recheck their calcium, and once it's safely back under 12, then you can restart the titration process, jumping back into the algorithm where it's appropriate.
Great, so you've navigated the titration and your patient is now on a stable maintenance dose. Fantastic. So what now? Well, our focus shifts. We're moving from that intensive titration phase into long-term care, which is all about monitoring, adverse events, and some key safety points.
One of the first things to talk about for long-term care is hypercalcemia. And this number really says it all. In the main study, just over 54% of patients had at least one high calcium reading. That's more than half. So this isn't a rare event. It's something you and your patient need to be ready for, and it really drives home why that long-term monitoring and patient education is so incredibly important. And that education piece is huge. It really comes down to making sure your patients know their bodies and can tell the difference between the symptoms of high and low calcium. Can they distinguish between feeling nauseous and lethargic versus that tingling and cramping? This is so critical because they really need to be your partner in this. They're on the front lines, and they need to know when to pick up the phone and call you. Now, here's a really specific, kind of unusual, but absolutely crucial safety point from the prescribing information. You have to tell your patients to only use one injection to get their daily dose. What does that mean? It means they should never try to combine the leftover bits from 2 different pens to make up a full dose. And the reason for this is all about dose accuracy. Trying to combine them introduces a ton of variability, which could lead to some really dangerous swings in their calcium levels. Of course, it's not just about calcium. There are other key warnings and precautions to be aware of. You've got the potential risk of osteosarcoma, which is a class warning. But from a very practical day 1 standpoint, you really need to talk to them about orthostatic hypotension. Make sure you advise them to give themselves those first few doses while they're sitting or lying down, just in case they get dizzy or lightheaded. It's a simple piece of advice that can prevent a fall.
And another key part of patient counseling is what to do about missed doses. The guidance here is really straightforward. It's basically a 12-hour rule. If they remember within 12 hours of their scheduled time, they should go ahead and take the dose. But if it's been more than 12 hours, they should just skip it and take their next dose as regularly scheduled. And if for some reason they have to stop treatment for 3 or more days, just be aware that you might need to evaluate them for hypocalcemia. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, so let's pull this all together into a simple, practical, clinical checklist. Think of this as the key takeaways, the things you need to remember to put this into practice. So here it is in 6 steps. Step 1, confirm those baseline labs, calcium at or above 7.8 and normal vitamin D. Step 2, initiate at 18 micrograms once daily. Easy. Step 3, don't forget to adjust their conventional therapy on day 1 right out of the gate. Step 4, you follow that titration flow chart, checking their calcium every 7 to 10 days after any change. Step 5, once they're stable, you can switch to monitoring their calcium every 4 to 6 weeks. And finally, step 6, which is really ongoing, always be counseling your patient on the symptoms of high and low calcium, making them a true partner in their care. So when you look at all this, it's clear this isn't just another drug. It's really a different way of thinking about treatment, right? It's a paradigm shift towards true hormone replacement and actively getting patients off their conventional therapies. So the question to leave you with is, how will this new approach change the way you manage your most complex hypoparathyroidism cases? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.